Ryzeal in its many variations has dominated the meta, and even though there will be more contention after the ban list, Ryzeal will still be good because it gets a new, very strong card. Hello, hope you're having a perfectly balanced day. I'm back to making videos again, and I'm here to show you my top 16 UK Open Ryzeal deck. Due to how prevalent this deck is and will continue to be, it's important to stay on top of how good and what this deck is, regardless of if you plan on playing Ryzeal or not. This isn't the only deck that I plan on playing, as I know some people liked the Memento coverage that I did in December, but for today we're going to stick with my pre-Alliance Insight pure Ryzeal deck that chooses to not play the Tachyon cards. I'm also now on Metafy, where you can find a detailed article on my tournament reports, as well as side patterns, deck building, and all that sort of stuff. And there's a bunch of other things on there too, for those willing to go the extra mile to be pro-level good at Yu-Gi-Oh! This is also my 200th video on YouTube, so I appreciate all the support that I've had so far. But with no further ado, enjoy! So let's go into the main deck first, and I will explain why I did not play the Tachyon cards. We have 3 X, 3 Ice, 3 Sword, 3 Bonfire. These are all very standard. These are our general 1-card starters. And although it does not always find a 1-card engine piece, I do consider Desires to also be a starter. I play 3 Desires and 1 Prosperity. So essentially pre-ban list, unless you are playing the Shark cards, I don't think Tachyon is needed, because you don't need to draw that many engine cards, and you're also leaning harder into draw. With the release of Tachyon and decks like Mermail becoming more popular, I feel like draw would be trending upwards in deck building popularity. I got drawed quite a few times at the UK Open and it never really mattered too much, and that's another big reason why I chose to play the pure version over the Shark version. And I know that the Shark version is essentially the same as pure. In my mind, because I wasn't going to play Tachyon in pure, they were separate versions. If I was going to play Tachyon in pure, it would be to remove one of the pots and then play 2, at which point it didn't really feel worth it, because I'd rather just have Prosperity, which is just a better card anyway, than have the additional slot. On the other hand, post-ban list, I think you will probably be forced to play Tachyon, because X is probably going to 1, and Bonfire is probably also going to 1. And if X is at 1, you probably can't play Desires, unless you are very brave, but I didn't want to have the weakness into draw as it is. And for the Ryzeal cards, which are a bit worse to draw, we have 2 Cross. This card is not bad to draw, but it is not great into Imperm, Impulse, Purge, and Draw. But I think that I wanted to play 2 of us if I'm playing Desires. You don't have to, the other one-offs are Plugin and Note. But the thing is that if you banish these off Desires, it hurts, but it's not the end of the world. Whereas if you only play 1 Cross and you banish it off Desires, that does hurt quite a lot. It makes the grind game a lot worse. Whenever I go second though, I always take out 1 Cross. And then post-ban list, when Bonfire and X likely go to 1, and you then cut Desires, I think you just play 1 Cross. There's an argument to play 2 with Alliance Insight to set it more off of the Star Ryzeal, but that's a whole different discussion, I guess. And for the tech cards, I played a slight mix of hand traps and power spells. I played 15 hand traps with 3 Loss, 3 Ash, 3 Droll, 3 Veiler, and 3 Imperm. So we'll go over Droll first, because Droll is the least standard one. So Droll obviously is not great into Malice, but it is good into Mitsurugi Ryzeal, Fiendsmith Ryzeal, and Shark Ryzeal, and I did expect a good number of pure Ryzeal to be playing Tachyon as well, and Droll is never bad into pure Ryzeal. What I more so meant earlier is that it feels a lot safer playing into Droll than going like Engraver effect or Mitsurugi plays or Tachyon Shark plays. In general, these hand traps were pretty much made here to have a better Ryzeal matchup to stop the duo drive play from resolving. Even though Veiler is like in general quite mid, it is also quite nice into a variety of different decks. I think it's one of the better hand traps against Blue Eyes, because if you can keep them off Drill Beam, that's pretty good. as I think Drill Beam is the scariest part of Blue Eyes. And also with Droll, it meant that as I got further into the event and faced more Ryzeal, some Mermail, that having Droll in my main deck would be a lot better. Whereas a different anti-Ryzeal card like Tronus would be a bit worse into the Rogue decks, and would also be not great into the Fiendsmith Ryzeal deck, because they can negate Metal Tronus with Caesar. And then yeah, that's the 15 hand traps, and the last 5 cards in the deck are all power spells. I play 2 Eclipse and 2 Talents. Eclipse is very nice, it's a decentish board breaker going second, and going first it lets Duo Drive resolve through Impermanent Veiler. And then Talents requires a bit less explanation, but I played 2 of it each because I'm playing 40 cards, and since my attack focus is more on hand traps, I'm not trying to draw multiple power spells with this list, so 2 of each was a good ratio. At some point soon I'll do another deck building article on Metafy about ratios, because I feel like the way that you deck build with ratios is quite commonly misunderstood. And then the 40th card is one called by. I was quite on and off with this, but I think that generally I quite like main decking called by in formats where it's going to be good going second enough of the time. And I think this is one of those metas where called by is good enough going second a decent amount of the time, because it can hit things like Requiem and Twins, and there's some nice things it can hit in other matchups going second as well. And it also means that I don't have to side deck this card, because even though my deck is stronger into Droll than the Tachyon version, being able to call by Droll to resolve Duo Drive, or having it set as a form of disruption, does make it so that I would want this card in my deck somewhere. And being able to justify putting it in the main deck then means that I have an extra slot in my side deck. And since I am playing 40 cards, being able to have a good 15 card side deck where I can draw those side deck cards more often is quite nice. So let's go on to the extra deck next. 2 Detto, 2 Duo, 2 Twins. Nothing too crazy here. Pretty normal ratios for a pure list. Maybe one of these get limited on the ban list, but I have no clue. And then 1 Aggravator to send off X. And then I also play Typhon. I think Typhon is important if you are not playing the Tachyon cards, because for the Tachyon cards, if we bring up these principles, you're giving your deck a worse matchup into Droll to make your deck more consistent. Since my deck is not a Tachyon version, it is less consistent. Therefore, I have to be prepared to be fighting games with only hand traps, or where I cannot protect my sword. And Typhon control is a relevant game plan in those scenarios. I think it's also a good point to go back to the 5 power spells to mention that because my deck is less consistent, it means that I'm only going to draw 1 engine card more often than the Tachyon build, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Instead of drawing a extra engine card, I can just draw one of these to help beat a hand trap. And I liked these cards more than Crossout, because Crossout isn't a great card going second, and is a bit worse into a wider variety of decks. I could have put it in the side deck, but I had other cards that I wanted to side deck. Going back to the X deck now, we have our rank 4s, and I'm playing both the Tornado and the Exciton. I think you need at least one of these to deal with True Light. I think this one is good to play regardless if you're playing Eclipse, but because I'm not playing Tachyon, I have the space to play this one as well, and this one can be quite good if you have a read on a face-down Metal Tronus. It's even better if you play Zeus, but I didn't play Zeus. Then we have Dweller, this card might get banned. Dugaras, this card's very good because it lets you draw 2, which is very good post-siding, and it lets you read 1 Lancia. The non-Ryzeal rank 4 that I summoned the most turn 1 wasn't actually one of these 2, but instead was Starliege. This card is fairly common in pure Ryzeal, but the way that I use it is a bit different. Normally, most people use this card by summoning it early to try and have a better chance of their Duo Drive resolving. I'm not a big fan of this because then it means that you lose harder to a potential Ashe or Nibiru. So what I do is I don't make this to protect Duo Drive, I just play as normal, and then if I get to resolve all my stuff and I have the extra bodies to make a rank 4, then I make the Starliege. And the reason for this is that Metal Tronus and even Slayer are actually quite popular cards in the main deck. And there were multiple times where I would have a read on them having Tronus or Slayer, and it was really, really good. Since I'm ending on this and not making it first, you do end up having the board where this can be targeted, but that's fine, because if they're having to use a card to target this first, and then target Detto afterwards, then I am perfectly fine with that exchange. And yeah, in general, it was great because the main punish for using this as an end board piece is Eclipse and Droplets, which neither are too popular in most decks. And then of course, post-siding, or if I know what my opponent is playing, I will make Dweller or Dugaras to draw into a side card. We have Castel. I play this over the Ignister because I don't play Tronus, and although it is smaller, I still get the OTK because I play Lancer. I played this card for Birmingham as well, and it was amazing. You unlock a few different OTKs by playing this card in your deck. It's also great if you're scared about drawing multiple Desires, or Desires plus Prosperity, because you can just discard the excess pot to make this. And you even get some super easy OTKs with Dugaras, because you can make this become 5k and then it can attack twice. So you can do things like Castel, spin a card back, summon Lancer, Dugaras, make it 5k, and now it can attack twice. Which if they only have 2 monsters and one of them is in attack mode, that's normally game, which you can't otherwise do without playing these cards. And that's the extra deck, which I'm very happy with. I think that post-ban list, let's say if they limit X, limit Bonfire, and you're forced to play the Tachyon cards, then the first thing that I would cut is probably one of these two. But if we're being realistic, they're likely going to ban Dweller, and that's then the free spot that you would replace for the Tachyon targets. But yeah, of course we'll have more to talk about the ban list when that does come around. Onto the side deck. I play both Freelancer and Free Chaos Hunter. I think with Pure, one of the main ways you lose is losing the Dyrot and Malice, so I wanted more cards to win in game 3 when they go first. And my thought was that this is better than Meows, because if they make the mid-range board of like Crypta plus Trap, or they only give you like 1 or 2 draws, and they set a back row and you don't draw Lightning Storm or Duster, then Meows can be a bit awkward. The approach that I went with though was just to have a better high roll option to beat the high roll matchup. I also played these 3. These are really good because they cover almost every matchup going second, which not many cards do. I think when a matchup like Malice eats up so much of your side deck, it's quite important to have cards that have good coverage into multiple matchups, especially when I side Slayer exclusively into Ryzeal, because as you saw in my extra deck, I only play Xyz monsters, I don't play any Link monsters. The reason being is that if I get hit by Frost into D-Barrier or Gnomes, it's normally by Malice. I think this card is much better than Tronus as a side deck card going second, because if you face the Fiendsmith version, this does beat both Caesar and the Detonator. And then the last 3 cards are Free Judgment because it's a generic good going first card. It's better than Strike because it can hit things like Tronus and Storm and Duster. So it's a pretty clean looking side deck, because the idea is that we have 9 cards which are tailored for the most popular matchups, these 6 being for the harder matchup, and then the other 6 are basically here to have coverage in every matchup. And yeah, that was the deck profile for my 13th place at the biggest regional in the UK. The round 9 loss was quite unfortunate, and I wouldn't change a single thing in the deck list. Thank you all for watching, hopefully you enjoyed and or found this video useful. There will be more videos soon, it will not be another 4 months hiatus. I'm also now back to live streaming on Twitch, and if Twitch isn't your thing, there's also now a VODs channel and a second channel for everything I do that's not Yu-Gi-Oh! But yeah, that's all from me. Have a perfectly balanced rest of your day, and adios.